A group of aggressive bandits attacks two defenseless women on a deserted road. The bandits mercilessly corner them. Suddenly, an imposing knight appears, commanding respect. With a single swing of his sword, he defeats the bandits, revealing himself to be a legendary warrior. Then we see a knight waking up in a forest, confused, not understanding how he got there. Examining his armor, he recognizes that he is wearing the sacred armor of Belinos, powerful, blessed with light, fire, and darkness, also granting him regeneration. He also carries the sacred shield of Tudites and the sword of sacred lightning. With this, he realizes he is now Ark, exactly the character from the game he used to play. What started as a normal night playing turned into a mysterious experience, where he inexplicably woke up in the character's body. To test what was happening, Ark uses his abilities and confirms that everything works like in the game. Remembering that his skin was a skeleton, he decides to keep his helmet on when he arrives in the nearby city, presenting himself as a celestial knight so he can blend in with the other inhabitants. Crossing a dark alley, he glances and spots a man talking to an elf, which fascinates him. Curious, he tries to follow her but loses her trail. In the process, he ends up finding a mercenary guild which is impressed with his armor. The mercenaries assume he is a noble who chose the path of a mercenary for mysterious reasons. Ark gets excited about the idea of adventures and accepts a mission to eliminate monsters. He then faces fierce orcs and defeats them with ease, quite satisfied with his abilities. During this journey, he meets a young woman named Rita, who thanks him for his help. The two women ask him to accompany them to the city. Ark loots the defeated bandits and upon returning delivers the vanquished orcs to the guild, receiving magic stones and money in return. After the job, he goes to his room where he enjoys a banquet, savoring the fruits of his victory. Upon arriving at the location, he discovers that the requester is a little girl named Marka. She wanted to gather medicinal herbs to help her mother, who has been struggling to support the family since Marka's father passed away a year ago. In honor of her father, Marka took on the responsibility of caring for her mother and decided to hire a mercenary to help with her task. While collecting the herbs, Ark notices suspicious movement and prepares to protect Marka from a possible attack. However, upon investigating, he discovers that what appeared to be a threat was, in fact, an injured nine-tailed cub. Using his magic, he heals the small creature and decides to adopt it, naming it Ponta. Now together, Marka, Ark, and Ponta head to a tree where the necessary herbs are guarded by an enormous basilisk. Creature with its gigantic tongue tries to attack Marka, but Ark shows agility and dodges the acidic breaths. In a very quick movement, he takes the little girl to a safe place. Using his shield of Tudites, he defends himself from the beast's charge, blocking its paws and even a point-blank poisonous breath. With a special move called Judgment, Ark manages to cut the creature in half. Glancing at the creature, he notices a black ring stuck on its paw which dissipates when he approaches. As a gesture of goodwill, Ark decides to take the enormous boar back to Marka's village, ensuring the family enjoys the meat. He brought fresh food for the people. Upon arriving, they are greeted with applause and thanks. Marka's mother, who is worried about rumors of the creature, feels relieved to see her daughter safe. Ark and Ponta then say goodbye to Marka and her family, promising to return to visit them. Meanwhile, in a forest at night, a group of warriors is in combat against another basilisk carrying a black ring on its leg. Despite defeating the creature, they suffer heavy casualties. 15 were killed and 38 wounded. By chance, they found the creature that Ark faced, and are surprised to realize that it was defeated with a single powerful blow. Ark and Ponta face a group of bandits hidden in a cave, defeating them with ease and discovering open cages full of gold. Their adventure is not limited to the cave. In a distant mansion, a nobleman receives alarming news. His daughter's caravan was attacked, but a knight intervened to save her. He is informed that a basilisk was eliminated with just one blow. The nobleman fears the political repercussions this failure could generate between the kingdoms. Upon leaving the cave, our protagonist is attacked by the elf he was following. She's very skilled and determined. She launches a series of blows that Ark manages to defend with his sword. She is convinced that he is one of the bandits responsible for kidnapping the elven children. The elf does not listen to his attempts at explanation. However, the moment she sees Ponta the fox, she hesitates. The elf reveals that the bandits captured elven children to sell them as slaves, and although Ark offers to help, she refuses, insisting that the problem must be solved by the elves. The next day, Ark and Ponta venture into an elven forest. By a twist of fate, they find humans kidnapping elven children. In an act of pure evil, the kidnappers injure one of the girls, which makes Ark go after the guy. Then the elf appears again with blood in her eyes, fighting the bandits, her sword dancing like an extension of her own will. Despite her anger, the leader of the kidnappers threatens to kill one of the girls if she doesn't stop attacking. With this threat, the elf surrenders. But Ark, without hesitation, attacks the leader, giving her the opportunity to defeat the other brazen little bandit. With the battle finally over, Ark frees the children, who are quite scared, fearing the presence of a human. However, seeing the elf by his side, they feel safer. The protagonist uses his abilities to undo the magic of a necklace the bandits used to control the girls, freeing them and healing the wounds they had suffered. The elf introduces herself as Arian, and upon discovering that Ark is a mercenary, she wants to hire him, eager to join forces against the bandits who threaten her people. Now Ark, Ponta, and Lady Arian teleport directly to the city, where the elf has a meeting scheduled with an elf named Dunka. When they meet, Dunka doesn't trust Ark right away, but this changes as soon as he sees Ponta. The little creature seems to be enough to soften the elf's distrust, and so he decides to give Ark a chance. Dunka then explains their plan. They will invade a mansion at night. With free time before the attack, Ark decides to take a stroll around the city. While Dunka takes the opportunity to talk privately with Arian, he is curious and even suspicious about why Arian trusts Ark so much. And she tells him about how he saved several children and how she was almost captured in the process. Meanwhile, Ark and Ponta hide in a dark alley where he can eat undisturbed. When night falls, the trio reunites and advances to the mansion. The elves were already devising a strategy to climb and invade quietly, but then Ark cuts the path and teleports everyone inside. Once everyone is inside, they split up and begin to investigate the place. Ark comes across a room full of fallen bandits. Before he can understand what happened, a ninja appears and attacks him without hesitation. He manages to defend himself, but the fight takes an unexpected turn when the ninja sees Ponta. Like Dunka, she recognizes the spiritual nature of the creature and is so intrigued that she interrupts the fight. She asks if Ark is there to free the elves, and upon hearing a yes, she reveals that the elves are trapped in the basement and hands him a document. And then, without even introducing herself, the ninja disappears as quickly as she appeared. Ark takes the document to Dunka and Arian. Upon analyzing it, they discover that it is a slave contract, revealing the buyers and sellers involved. They already know who the culprits are, but before they can react, 3 bandits find them. Arian is very quick and lethal and defeats them with the flame of her blade. The trio continues to advance to the dungeons, where they finally find and free the elven children. Our protagonist wastes no time and teleports everyone out of the mansion, which is soon consumed by flame. Outside, he removes the control collars from the girls, impressing Dunka once again. With the mission accomplished, Dunka decides to take the girls back to the elven village. While Ark and Arian are ready for the next adventure and teleport to the next mission, the mansion of the elf and slave buyers. Then we see the leader of the bandits that Ark and Arian defeated in the forest, now with his arm in a cast, reporting to his boss that he failed to capture the elven children. He tries to justify himself by explaining that he was intercepted. The boss becomes impatient and disturbs 2 elves who are tied in a corner of the room, and becomes completely irritated by his subordinates' incompetence. At that exact moment, Ark and Arian teleport into the mansion, appearing before 2 guards. Before they can react, Ark makes a quick movement with his sword, defeating them with a devastating blow that attracts the attention of the other guards. The news soon reaches the bandits' boss, who orders an immediate reaction. But before they can act, Ark and Arian blow up the door, invading the room and saving the tied elves. The bandit leader becomes desperate and tries to flee, but our protagonist teleports right in front of him, making him faint like a maiden without striking a single blow. And unintentionally, he ends up discovering a hidden room during the search for the leader. After freeing the elves, they allow the 2 to have their revenge against the feudal lord, the rustic fellow who is behind the kidnapping. Meanwhile, Arian fights a troop of guards, using the flames of her blade to defeat them one by one. As soon as she finishes, she catches our protagonist filling a bag with the feudal lord's gold. She stares at him suspiciously, but Ark is quick to respond. He deflects the focus, saying that by taking the gold, they will weaken the financing of the slave market. Then suddenly the place begins to suffer several explosions that were not caused by either of them. Sensing the danger, the protagonist and Arian teleport out of the mansion, taking a good amount of gold with them. With the mission accomplished, Arian paid Ark for his help and asks if he would like to participate in another mission. This time they needed to visit the elven village, which makes our protagonist curious about the place. Before leaving, Arian makes an unexpected request. She wants to see Ark's face before introducing him to the elder of the elven village. But he hesitates, explaining that it might be complicated. But he eventually gives in and reveals his true form, a skeleton, a consequence of a curse that imprisoned him in that appearance. But even though he is an old skeleton, Arian is not fazed. She trusts him, believing that he is not an evil undead, and she promises to help him break this curse. And in a distant castle, the king gathers his children for a serious conversation about the attack on the mansion. During the conversation, they discover that the feudal lord was involved in elf trafficking. The king is concerned about the gravity of the situation and orders a formal investigation. He puts the prince in charge of the operation. Meanwhile, Ark, Ponta, and Arian traverse a dense forest. To speed up the journey, Ark decides to try to use the teleportation ability with the intention of advancing quickly. But then he ends up teleporting directly near a river. Despite the error, the group takes advantage of the location and sets up camp to rest. Back at the castle, the princess begins to suspect that one of her brothers was involved in elf trafficking. Concerned about this, she is entrusted with an important diplomatic mission, with the objective of negotiating with the elves and calming some tensions that have begun to arise between them and the kingdom. The 3 arrive at the elves' village, and the protagonist waits a long time outside until he receives authorization to enter. The protagonist is introduced to Arian's parents, who are elders of the village. Her mission was only to send a warning to the kidnappers, not to attack directly. But Ark explains how everything evolved into the rescue of the elves, which complicates the situation. The elders are a bit wary, as this could cause trouble with the humans and break the peace treaty. During dinner, Ark decides to show confidence and takes off his helmet in front of Arian's family. After that, Arian and her father teleport to a meeting with the Elven Council. Meanwhile, her mother decides to take the protagonist for a stroll through the village. At first, the elves don't like his presence much, until the girls he saved appear and run to hug the hero. In the council, people discuss whether or not they should take responsibility for the attack on the feudal lord's mansion. Some are eager to retaliate against the humans, recalling ancient attacks from 400 years ago that they let slide. Others prefer not to stir up more trouble. Meanwhile, Arian's mother calls Ark for training, and as delicate as she seems, she is a 245-year-old lady who trained her own daughter. And the result of the fight, Ark got an epic beating. The guy was clobbered, and with only 2 blows you see, he's on the ground, realizing he never truly knew how to fight. With that, he decides to focus more on training and become a respectable swordsman. When Arian and her father return, the council's resolution wasn't great. But he believes she should continue investigating. On the way, they meet Arian's sister, who is about to get married, leaving Arian confused by the idea of falling in love with someone strong. Back at training, Ark, already panting, tries to use his teleportation skills to defeat Arian's mother. But she is too fast and defeats him again. As a consolation prize, she prepares a lavish bath for Ark and Ponta. But the peace is short-lived. Arian arrives from the meeting, finding their presence in the bath strange, and blows everything up with a fireball. Before dinner, Arian's father explains that the council has decided that she should investigate the buyers and sellers of the found documents, in addition to continuing to free enslaved elves. As payment, they offer a tip to break the curse of the protagonist's skeletal body. It seems there is a magic lake protected by a dragon to solve the problem. Even knowing that this sounds like a tall tale, the protagonist has no choice and accepts, and Arian offers to accompany him. Later, our protagonist is idly testing his curse-canceling magic and realizes that he can return to human form. This surprises him greatly, as he had never thought of it before. Luckily for him, his ability allows him to return to his normal body, but only for a few seconds. The next day, our protagonist and Arian set out on a journey and decide to stop at an inn. During their stay, Arian comments that crossing the forest would be a much faster route, though more dangerous as it is ghost wolf territory. A local old woman warns them about the risks, but the two decide to take a chance. As they cross, Arian comments that the tale of these ghost wolves is perfect for making a wedding dress and remembers her sister's wedding. Ark offers to get some tails as a gift. But before they can act, they are surrounded by the wolf. Phantoms create illusory copies to confuse their prey, making it difficult for our protagonist to hit them with his sword. He tries to hit them with his sword, but it's useless, and Arian manages to defeat them using her magic. Then the protagonist finds the pack leader and teleports to face him, but the wolf notices his approach and dodges, making him notice the black ring on its leg. The protagonist teleports behind the wolf, and the wolf does the same thing. But what the wolf didn't expect was that it was just a trap, so it wouldn't see the fire magic shot that the protagonist uses through his cape. And then he ends up cutting the black ring. When he is awakened from mind control, he retreats, taking his pack with him. While resting, Arian prepares the gift for her brother with the fur of the slain wolves. At the same time, Princess Uriana's carriage proceeds to her diplomatic mission. She suspects that her brother, named Dakaris, is involved in elf trafficking, while Sect, who is the king's youngest son, only wants to investigate the case. Before she can finish her thought, her carriage is attacked by a troop. At the camp, Ark reflects on the battle, observing the points where he can improve. And out of nowhere, Ponta runs away. He follows his pet and discovers the princess's carriage attacked with Uriana stabbed. Upon investigating, he realizes that the mercenaries are trying to simulate a common looting, but the protagonist, with the help of the ghost wolves, defeats the attackers. Recognizing that she is noble, he uses his healing abilities to save the princess and her guards, and while he casts, she sees his gleaming armor but faints. Then the protagonist leaves, and when they recover, they barely know what happened, and they continue with their mission and Ark with his route. And the protagonist and Arian finally arrive in the capital, where they witness a girl being mistreated by some guys. The young woman beats them up and recognizes Ark's armor, and he in turn realizes that it is the ninja girl. The Kunoichi remembers when her mission began to avenge her beast people who were kidnapped by humans. The beast people are what people with cat ears like her or other animal parts are called, and she introduces herself as Shion, and asks Ark how he knew she was a ninja. He said that in his homeland there was something similar, being informed that perhaps he came from the same place as the great founder Shinobi, which makes Ark think that another Japanese person went to that world 600 years before. Shion and Arian's mission is very similar, and the protagonist tries to convince them to work all three together, and after a long conversation they end up accepting. At the castle, Dakaris complains to his servant that his plans are not working. The wolves have stopped responding to the power of the ring, and investigations into elf trafficking and beast people could be linked to him. The prince decides to leave and move from there. The trio then goes through the forest. Ark wants to know more about the great founder, and according to Shion's story, he is actually Hanzo, one of the greatest ninjas in Japanese history. Then they arrive at a fortress where most of the slaves are. Shion explains that many ninjas are infiltrated at various levels of the kingdom's society, so they can plan an attack from within. That very night, Shion says the clan has an attack plan, and Ark decides to wear a mask and some rags so his armor won't be recognized. Shion returns with her brother Gomen. He and the protagonist reunite, becoming friends through the power of frank exchange, 5 minutes without losing their friendship. The four begin the invasion plan, with Gomen and Ark attacking the front gate. Gomen uses earth ninjutsu to hit a good number of guards, and Ark hits the others. The two invade, causing an uproar. While Gomen attacks with his earth powers, our protagonist increases his magic, using his blessings on his friend, which ends up destroying more than they imagined and ends up burying them both. Bunch of idiot. With the entrance finally cleared, Shiom and Arian invade the fortress alongside a group of shinobi who advance in perfect synchronicity. As they traverse a dark corridor, Ponta with her keen instincts senses the presence of lurking guards. Quickly Shiom activates her water jutsus, neutralizing the enemies with fluid and precise movement. To ensure her back is safe, Arian conjures fire magic, creating a flaming barrier that disintegrates any guard who dares to approach. The two warriors reach the dungeons, where the scene is desolate. They free the imprisoned slaves, and among them those who still have strength grab some weapons, ready to fight for their freedom, while the others rush to help the injured, joining the fight for survival. Arian stands out in combat, facing guards with determination and clearing the path to freedom. Meanwhile, Gomen and our protagonist manage to get out of the landslide and join the two. Everyone was freed in this area. But the mission to rescue those who remain imprisoned in the building behind them still remains. And then, the new plan in mind, Gomen decides to stay to face the guards who continue to threaten the mission. Trusting in our protagonist, the task of protecting Shiom and Arian, three advance to a dark cave, fighting bravely against a horde of guards that appears in the way. He goes smashing everything. The atmosphere is very tense, but their determination is unwavering. And with that, they manage to reach the prisoners. Shiom becomes somewhat impulsive and opens a cell door and is faced with a horrendous sight. Several sick and injured beast folk who weren't even fit to be sold. And in cruel contempt they were eliminated and thrown into a single place as if they were trash. Her heart fills with anger and sadness at seeing this scene. Outside, Gomen faces several guards alone, hardening his muscles and using all his strength in a fierce fight. Meanwhile, Ark is consumed by indignation at seeing that scene, and teleports the prisoners out of the fortress, saving their lives. But his fight doesn't end there. He teleports back to the battlefield, joining forces with Gomen. Together they combine their destructive powers, causing an explosion that echoed throughout the place, completely dismantling the fortress and freeing even more prisoners. With the wounded finally safe, the protagonist teleports back with the lifeless slaves, and asks Arian to offer them a warrior's funeral. He wishes their souls to be released to the heavens, in a tribute to the lives that were tragically cut short. In his refuge, Dakaris is tense. The guy is scared to death. He receives the report of the attack on the fortress, and becomes totally desperate and begins to get lost in his dark thoughts. However, his loyal servant with calculated coldness stabs him in the back, revealing himself to be a spy in the service of his brother Sek. This treacherous act is part of Sek's broader plan, which aims to dominate the kingdom and achieve advantages at any cost. With the fugitives finally saved, Shiom and Gomen reunite with the protagonist and Arian. After another 5 minutes of intense exchange of blows that only strengthen the friendship between them, they end up hugging, celebrating unity and determination. The girls, on the other hand, reinforce their promise to become stronger, willing to save as many people of their folk as possible. And as a sign of gratitude, Shiom and Gomen offer to take Ark and Arian to a secret village, where they will be able to obtain more information about the elf slave trade. Meanwhile, Princess Yuriana finally arrives on the other side of the kingdom to fulfill her diplomatic mission. Upon investigating the situation, she discovers that her brother Dakaris was responsible for the attack and that he is now dead. With this revelation, the princess begins to suspect that all this chaos was orchestrated by Sek, so she becomes determined to protect herself, assumes the throne instead of her brother, and prepares to confront the betrayal. And according to the information that our protagonist and Arian obtained from Shiom, they needed to go to another kingdom where the princess is. The emperor of this kingdom, who helped Dakaris by providing the black rings, is very furious with the defeat of his ally. Also suspecting that Sek may have killed Dakaris, he begins to devise plans to internally weaken the other kingdoms and dominate everything, consolidating his power once and for all, eliminating any threat to his control. Then Ark and Arian are on their way to another kingdom, crossing a scorching desert, when he notices that the sky was full of wyverns flying over the region. To combat these menacing creatures, Ark invokes powerful lightning magic, causing thunderclouds to form quickly, dispersing the monsters with his electrical fury. Meanwhile, an unknown person was observing them from a distance, and after the confrontation, our protagonist tries to treat Arian's injuries, who was accidentally hit during the battle. Then they go looking for shelter, and the trio heads to an inn to recover and elaborate a plan on how to reach the kingdom. But then Arian expresses her concerns about the possibility of finding an even more prejudiced environment, especially towards elves. The man who was observing and spying on them, playing curious, finally introduces himself as Kars. Arian is worried about his appearance and tries to hide her ears, but ends up discovering that everyone at the inn knows Kars. He has lived in that city for over 10 years, managing to coexist peacefully with humans. Basically, he is a monster biologist. He reveals that he needs help to capture a dangerous species, and offers the two a map of the kingdom and a book about monsters as payment. Meanwhile, Arian can't stop thinking about the coexistence between humans and elves. The protagonist and Arian start drinking a local alcohol, which seems to be extremely good. Oh, good old hooch. However, Arian ends up getting too drunk. She drinks too much. The bitch gets so drunk that she is bothered by the idea of interracial coexistence, and ends up destroying the entire room in her frustration. The next morning, the dude joins Kars and an ally who are in 2 carts, transporting goblin carcasses to use as bait for sandworms. Kars' ally offers herbs to help Arian recover from her hangover. She's disgusted, but decides to drink, giving a chance to the idea of trusting humans. During the conversation, Ark plays curious about the worms and discovers that they are, in fact, giant carnivorous worms that live underground, and that they attack the wyverns he scared away. While discussing, Arian notices that the other cart has disappeared, and before they could act, a huge sandworm, at least 30 meters tall, attacks the human in the overturned cart. Arian tries to save herself with her flames, but the worm counterattacks, dissipating her magic. Then the protagonist quickly places himself between Arian and the creature, and uses his brute force to lift it off the ground and finishes off the worm once and for all. After the battle, our protagonist and Arian return to the village, pulling a cart with the defeated creature as promised. And during the journey, Arian asks Kars why he lives among humans, and Kars replies that over time he realized that humans are much more than they appear. He tells Arian about an elf who married a human who was initially destined to be enslaved, but he bought her and made her his wife. Kars speaks fondly of the love between them, emphasizing that everyone deserves to live happily together, regardless of their differences. In a dark hideout, an unknown man talks to Fumba, a powerful crime lord who is relaxed with 2 companions on his arm. The man expresses dissatisfaction with the way Fumba conducts his negotiations, and to prove his authority and what he is capable of, Fumba takes him to a pit where abyssal creatures inhabit, controlled by various black rings. Without hesitation, Fumba grabs one of the women and throws her into the pit, showing the fate that awaits those who displease him. Meanwhile, our protagonist and Arian arrive in the city in search of information about the imprisoned elves, and soon discover that the kingdom is enveloped in a mystery, constantly disappearing with many reports of monster sightings. While our protagonist feeds Ponta, he hears a woman scream being attacked by 3 men. And then when he goes there, he saves the woman, and she's very grateful and hugs him in thanks. Arian appears shortly after catching the scene and can't hide her jealousy. 3 men were responsible for taking the woman to Fumba, who planned to abuse them before delivering his beasts. With the mission failed, Fumba becomes very revolted, and feeds the giant tiger with the bodies of the 3 captured men. And then our protagonist and Arian head to a fortress where many elves were last seen. And Arian is quite uncomfortable and passes on the information abruptly, but our protagonist doesn't perceive the reason for her irritation. In fact, she is jealous. Then the duo invades the fortress, defeating the guards with ease and end up discovering a secret passage. They cross the dungeons, where they find signs of imprisoned beasts, until they reach an underground cave that was built there. And then they come across Fumba, who orders Arian to kill our protagonist using a mind control spell. Arian, under Fumba's control, attacks our protagonist without hesitation. Then he tries to undo the curse with his special ability, but it doesn't work immediately, forcing him to defend himself against his friend's attacks. In the midst of the battle in Arian's mind, she finds herself in a training field with her sister, reliving memories of when the 2 trained together seeking strength. Meanwhile, our protagonist realizes that even after attempts to break the spell, something is wrong. He notices that Fumba doesn't seem to have used magic directly, until he notices a small imp hidden, controlling Arian's mind. Ponta, with her keen instincts, attacks the creature, allowing our protagonist to finish it with a powerful fireball, freeing Arian from mind control. Fumba is enraged by the imp's defeat and reveals himself to be a monster tamer. He flaunts several black rings on his hide. The protagonist understands that these items are connected to his power. And then Fumba summons a giant tiger, proudly recounting his cruelties and the way he subjugates his creatures. But our protagonist, with a single blow, decapitates the tiger, surprising Fumba. And then he becomes very irritated and summons a legion of monsters, ogres, basilisks, and other colossal creatures. And our protagonist, with his sword in one hand and his shield in the other, faces the beasts with mastery, delivering precise cuts, and using his defensive abilities to protect himself. Even with the horde of monsters falling before his blade, Arian, still unconscious, is in danger. Suddenly, Shiom and her Shinobis appear, invading the place and saving Arian from an imminent attack. The protagonist is relieved by the coincidence and thanks Shiom. But she is confused and reveals that this was no accident. She and Arian had planned this invasion earlier, but Arian, consumed by jealousy, didn't tell our protagonist the plan. Fumba is now furious and cornered. He summons his masterpiece, a monstrous creature, and flees quickly as the monster's uprising causes a cave-in. Ark thinks fast and teleports all his friends out of the fortress to safety. When the dust settles, they spot the creature's true form. A hydra, a gigantic abomination threatening to devastate everything around it. Our protagonist observes the great hydra and realizes that on the creature's chest there are several black rings, similar to those Fumba uses to control monsters. With these rings, Fumba commands the hydra and fires a gigantic energy blast directly at Ark. In the past, Fumba was seen as inferior to his tribe. Rejected and humiliated by the elder who called him weak, Fumba decided to abandon his people and offer his skills to the emperor, who was impressed and welcomed him. The power to control monsters gave Fumba a prestigious position in the kingdom, but his resentment and desire for revenge drove him to extremes. Back in the present, our protagonist, in a last-second move, teleports his friends away from the attack, protecting them with the power of his shield. Arian is still under the residual effects of Fumba's control, who reveals that even while under the spell, she heard all the atrocities committed by him and now swears revenge. However, our protagonist reminds her that saving the city from the Hydra must be a priority. She is somewhat reluctant about this, but agrees, and the group decides to split up. Arian, Shiom, and Ponta go after Fumba, while our protagonist faces the terrible creature. While all this is happening, the Emperor is informed of the imminent invasion and is aware of the Hydra's approach. And aware that the monster tamer has lost control of the situation, the Emperor plans to punish him severely. On the battlefield, the Hydra prepares to launch a new energy blast, and our protagonist, with his superhuman strength, delivers a powerful blow to the mouth of one of the heads, which interrupts the attack. The other heads of the Hydra try to devour him, but Ark uses his shield as a battering ram, crushing one of the creature's 5 heads. The Hydra is now enraged and fires 3 consecutive energy blasts, and the protagonist teleports to avoid them, but one of its heads captures him with a firm bite. He is trapped and sacrifices himself so that the other 3 heads try to fire at him. But before that happens, Ark uses powerful magic, cutting off the head that held him and protecting him from the impacts of the blasts. Feeling the weight of the battle, he invokes his most powerful magic. He summons an Ifrit, a gigantic infernal creature enveloped in flames. The Ifrit, with its imposing presence and devastating firepower, joins the fight against the Hydra, preparing for the epic confrontation. Now, with the help of an infernal entity, Ark prepares to deliver the final blow to the monstrous creature and save the city from imminent destruction. The 2 find Fumba, who believes himself to be very strong as he controls large creatures, but Arian challenges him, saying that he's just a weak man with big weapons. And with just one blow, she manages to eliminate several imps that he believed he could use to control her mind again. While they fight, Shiom recognizes his abilities and realizes that the source is a tattoo he has on his back, which she injures, preventing him from casting any magic. Fumba warns that in this way the Hydra is out of control and will destroy everything, enjoying this idea, but Arian believes that the protagonist will defeat it. He becomes quite defenseless and unable to react in combat, and Arian burns him with flames. Poor guy got completely messed up. Meanwhile, the Ifrit is merciless, tearing off heads and destroying the ring. The Hydra even tries to flee, but the protagonist grabs it by the tail, throwing it into the sky, and the Ifrit shoots a flame from its mouth, eliminating it. The 3 unite and discover that Princess Yuriana met with the Lord of the Elves. She takes responsibility for the persecution of the elves and allows the investigation to continue. Then she goes and turns in her brother's sect, who is allied with the Emperor. With that, she asks for the elves' support to ascend to the throne. This way everyone wins. The elven elder accepts, and both believe that elves and humans can coexist. With this peace treaty, Arian feels strange. She, who is always in combat, will no longer need to save her race, and she begins to understand that, in fact, humans and elves can coexist. Meanwhile, Sek discovers that his sister did not die, and begins to devise a plan so that he can remain in power.